It was the 80s, man. They were just trying to keep us off drugs. We're gonna make focaccia today, and then I'm gonna put a spin on it that my family's obsessed with. It's so good, you could eat it every day, and therefore, we call it everyday bread. All right, so there's all these things like, I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free. These are not going to be the recipes that you're finding from me. Not because I don't believe in gluten-free and dairy-free, but because I have a milk cow, and because flour is pretty cheap and I can feed a lot of people with it, and I got a lot of people here. There are 5 kids in my house, and the reason I'm sharing this recipe with you today is because this pleases literally all of us, from the little bitty baby to the big ol', almost like Georgia and Bo's birthdays are 2 days apart. She's about to be 2. He's about to be 42. We have a lot going on this week. So this is going to be one of those things that is, number one, super duper easy. This bread, you can proof it a lot longer. You can let this fermentation, it's going to be sourdough. You can let this go 24, 48 hours. I just am going to do this kind of quick today. I'm going to make this part in the morning. We're going to eat it at dinner. Because I'm going to make this as the everyday bread, this is going to satisfy like a whole lot of bellies. So this is really satiating. There's a rich spread that I'm going to put on this at the end, and all I serve this with is like pepperonis or salami, whatever you have. I use the everyday bread spread on the focaccia, and then I use like apples on the side. Everyone is going to be happy, and I'm going to show you the final result at the end of this video. Focaccia is easy. I use this recipe from the Clever Carrot, but then you can kind of pick and choose things as you start baking. I am only coming into like my baking era. I'm good at breads, I'm terrible at cakes, and I'm pretty decent at like a cupcake. Brownies, I'd love your brownie recipes because I have not mastered them and I need to. But focaccia is so easy that even I can do it. So I take the Clever Carrot recipe, I leave out the honey, but I'll leave you guys the link below in the description because this is not my own. And it starts with sourdough and water. I need healthy boundaries in my life. So I use the scale, and it just makes it easier on me. So like I keep track of how to do it. But a lot of people just measure by heart. So this is, I think it's like 350 water, and then 50 to 75 grams of sourdough starter. If you don't have sourdough starter, you can totally make this with yeast. I think she even tells you how to do it on her website. This is like 54 grams. See? Healthy boundaries with a splash of creativity. And then we're going to set it off to the side. You can just mix this up. I like fingers, but Bo really hates fingers in like making messes while he cooks. So he uses a fork. And then after this, we're going to add in the flour. But this just helps you break up the sourdough. So if you're new to sourdough, you just want to feed it until it kind of rises up. You'll see it bubbling. You'll see it, we call it the happy starter. Wasn't that a good sound? Okay, so here's what my sourdough starter looks like. This is happy. Kind of see those air pockets, bubbly, fermenty. A lot of people think when I share sourdough that I'm sharing my sourdough, with the exception of like focaccia, or like, actually I guess it's just this one thing that Bo does. But Bo makes all of our artisan loaves. I rarely make artisan sourdough. He is the one always, like he started us on sourdough. This is gonna be 500 grams. It's gonna look like a lot because it is. So when we lived in Katy, like 6 years ago, he probably started making sourdough bread like 7 years ago. It's about 500 grams. This part I don't like getting my fingers in, so I'm gonna add the salt to this as well, and then I'm just gonna use a fork and mix it all together. If you're a baker and you're like, no, you should be sifting things. Ooh, also, get yourself an apron. You can just wipe it on your shirt. I have been wiping flour on my shirt for a really long time, and finally was like, what if I didn't have to change my clothes after I bake all the time? Bo baked a lot of really bad sourdough bread. He was like, hey, we're going to be prepared for anything. We're going to be ready for when Jesus comes back. And if the world goes to pot beforehand, we're going to make sure that we know how to make bread. We can feed our family. So he learned how to make bread. And we have been eating sourdough bread since before 2020 made it cool. Ollie is a baker in our family. He's very good at baking. I'm gonna add a little more water. If you are putting in the honey, we'll just make this a little bit sweeter, kind of like a sweet pretzel dough. If you're a product of the 80s, you may have gone to elementary school and had a book it program, and you could read like 5 or 10 books and then go with your proof of your like check off from your teacher to get a free personal pan pizza.
What?
I know, right? My kids are like, "Why? You could have gone to Pizza Hut for reading books." They're like, "I want my credit. Give me back credit for Book It." It was the 80s, man. They were just trying to keep us off drugs. All right, so here is the focaccia. It's going to be set aside. I think I'm going to come back and check it in like 30 minutes. And then I'll put some oil in the bottom of this, cover it with like a plastic wrap. It's going to cover for, I don't know, a couple of hours until it like really doubles. So in 30 minutes, I'm going to check it. Then I'm going to wrap it up with some olive oil, and then it's going to rise. And then this evening, we're going to put it into a hot skillet, and I'm going to show you how we add on the everyday bread spread to change your ever-living life. Movie magic makes it so that I'll be back with you in a minute, but this is going to be like 30 minutes to an hour. The first thing we need for this everyday spread is mayo. You can use store-bought mayo. I just don't have any. So I started making homemade mayo a couple of months ago when I didn't have mayo, and now I'm like, why would I ever go buy it? So you can do this in a lot of ways. I think once you start making mayo, people have like, you must have the vinegar, you must have the lemon, whatever. Like, this is how I make it, and if you want to make it this way too, you can. If you have a way you like better, good. And you can even share it in the comments so someone else can like it too. So here's how we do. I measure this one with my eyes, but you could probably get about a cup, which I know is half the size of this jar. There we go, that's about half. And that's just regular old avocado oil. I used to make this with olive oil, and it was disgusting. So now I make it with avocado. 1 egg. Some people just do the yolks. You could do that. Save your eggs for your chickens and your pigs. Or your neighbor's chickens and pigs if you don't have them. I like Dijon mustard. You can use whatever mustard you want. You don't even have to use mustard. But I like it a little tangy, and then I don't use vinegar. You do not need a gadget. In fact, I need a new gadget because this is pretty busted. I use lemon juice to my eyeballs. And then if I need more, I add more. I like salt and pepper, so I put a dash of that and a pinch of that. And then the one thing that I learned about mayo years ago, tried to make it in the blender, like the regular, Vitamix or whatever, is that I'm gonna mess it up every time. So when I started making it with an immersion blender, this is the one tool I'd be like, this is a good gadget to have for this. When I started making it with the immersion blender, it was like fail-proof. I never failed at mayo. If you have one of these, and a lot of people do, but I had one of these when I was in high school, and it was the coolest thing, and I would make milkshakes with it. Ice cream, milk, boom. But this is not a milkshake, this is mayo. There's gonna be magic that happens right here. If you have never seen mayo be made, you're gonna be like, what? And how many of us thought mayo had dairy in it for like ages? I think just because of the color, but it has no dairy. This is what it has. Ready? Go. Okay, so I wasn't gonna talk while it was running. Look how thick that is. Like seconds ago, that was oil and egg, and now it emulsified. That's why I like this handy dandy, because when I use the blender, you have to pour it in so slowly, but when you use the immersion blender, it's like you're already going slowly up and down the jar with it, and you might see like a little bit of oil on the top. Once that all combines, that's when you know it's ready. I'm not cooking for anybody else, so I'm tasting with my finger. Perfect. Could use probably a little less mustard for my family's liking, but you know what? I like mustard. I like a tangy mayo because this recipe that we're about to make on the spread is really rich. Lots of cheeses, lots of garlic, so the tangy mayo can kind of cut that a little bit, but this is choice. Look how thick this is. Like, that's good mayo. It took me seconds to make. I'll never go back to store-bought. All right, Bo has left me to produce this with the camera by myself, so if we're a little bit like this, I apologize. We'll get better with each time we share a recipe. This is the everyday part of everyday bread. This is the spread, it is the magic. It's something, it's like a universal spread. Like you can put this on bagels, it will change your life. You can put this inside like a lasagna. You can put this as your...
What if we put this for a fried cheese? That would be good.
I think we'd have to freeze it, but it would be legit. It would be so good. Like, I can't think of something you would add everyday bread spread to, and it would not be like a miracle. Also, Ollie was really thinking like, are you honestly sharing this with the world? This is like a family secret. So I share this with you at the behest of my children because they've protected this like a treasure.
It is a treasure.
It is a treasure. It's so, so good. So it's going to start
gold.
like any regular pantry treasure should with garlic. So take you an amount of garlic that you feel is delightful. At this recipe, for this, I will use, 2, 4, 6 cloves of garlic. It could be 8. You garlic your little heart out on this. You almost can't go wrong. So, yeah, maybe a couple more. We're gonna add the mayo. We're gonna add about a cup of Parmesan, about a cup of, maybe it's gonna be 2 cups. 2 cups of Parmesan, 2 cups of, oh my goodness.
So amazing.
So good. Let's regroup. 2 cups of Parmesan, 2 cups of mozzarella. I'm gonna use store-bought, but I've used this with homemade mozz, and it is so good. And then about a cup of mayo, but just like when we were making the focaccia, you're just gonna add to it if it's too dry looking. I'll show you what it should look like. And then we've obviously got our garlic. If you're wondering about my high-tech 1982 Cuisinart food processor that my mother picked up from a garage sale, yes, this is my preferred.
This was hers.
It was hers that she got from a garage sale. This is my preferred method of preparing this dish. You could also do it by hand. It's just, you want that garlic really, really fine. So you would say like more than minced. You'd want it like a grated garlic if you're doing this by hand. Cheesy, cheesy, cheesy.
Why don't you just put it
Cheese.
in the thing?
Ollie just asked me, why don't we put the cheese in the food processor? And I said, because it gives you inconsistent chunks. But if you like it like that, like if you don't care about whether it's consistent, like there might be a chunk of mozzarella in one slice, or you're like, oh no, I really like kind of a rustic texture, you go right ahead. I really don't think you can mess this recipe up. It's just flavor explosion of goodness. A little bit of mozzarella, a little bit of Parmesan, shred it up. Ollie added the mayo. We're gonna put the cheeses in. Yeah, I think we're gonna add herbs today. Ollie's gonna run to the garden and he's gonna get some rosemary. The mozzarella is gonna make it really like, you know, that stringy kind of like delicious texture, but what you don't want is overwhelming amounts of mozzarella. So you might need to duck and weave a little bit here and add some more Parmesan. You might add some more garlic to it, whatever you love the taste of. But the best way to eat this is so that you have a really good ratio of the cheeses in with your mayo. That mayo and the cheese combo can make it too oily. So you really want to look at the texture I'm going to show you at the end of this so that you can say like, oh yeah, that's going to end up with like a bubbly kind of crusty cheese when you broil it instead of just like a soggy mess. But I do think the type of bread, using focaccia instead of just a French loaf, is going to change the way the mouthfeel is of this bread. Okay, we're getting there. She's still a little chunky. Oh gosh, she's good, y'all. She's so thicky, good, delicious. Got a little more blending to do, but that's why I like this stinking food processor. Obviously, this is not an ad. It's just one of those things, like, I hate throwing stuff away. And my mom does too. Obviously, she's had this for 40 years. She found it at a garage sale. I wish, it's so cliche. I am a granny at this point. I wish they made things the way they used to, because this machine is so fine. I think if it even had those like shredding attachments, I'd love it even more. But the fact that I have this one blade, I put in 6 cloves of garlic and it destroyed them, but like pulverized them just perfectly so that they'll mash into this. It's like unreal. This is butter we made at home. Oh my goodness. Ollie just brought in rosemary and sage from the garden. You can get it from the grocery store, guys. You don't have to grow everything yourself. But this is butter that I made from my cow. You can also use it from the store. So we're gonna put in half a cup of butter and see how thicky it is. Glad I was saying these things out loud because I was like, that is a lot more ploppy than we want it. What is it missing? It's missing butter. The butter was in the freezer, so it's a little bit tighter, a little bit harder than it normally is. Add your butter in. You want to do it?
Yes.
I know you like that. Show how thicky it is. Thick. Yeah, that's what we want. We want less, we want a big plop, less of a drip. This is probably going to come out to like 2 tablespoons of mixed garden herbs. You really could do oregano, you could do a chive in here. Something that is super yummy, that doesn't cost you a lot of money, and that is already available to you. Don't run out to get stuff. This just adds extra. In fact, Ollie was just saying, I've made this for years and I've never once put herbs in it, but we started making herb butter for steaks and pork chops, and it changed our life. So now we're all about it. So yeah, I'd say that's probably 2 tablespoons. We're gonna mix this up, and then we're gonna put it in the fridge until our bread is ready. And by the time the bread is ready to bake, this is gonna be more of like a smoothie whipped kind of texture. And then you're gonna spread it on your bread, kind of like a cream cheese. So if this is looking nice and thick, awesome. If it's looking dry, add just about a spoonful of mayo at a time to get it thinned out to that ploppy kind of consistency. Ploppy is a real luxurious, appetizing, delightful word to say. If that made you grossed out, like some people hate the word moist, so sorry about that. But you're looking for that very specific texture. We want it a little bit thinner than a cream cheese, but this is gonna go in our fridge. Yeah, you can try it.
Grossed out about raw stuff.
That was good.
So good.
Oh, it's so much garlic. I love it. Into the fridge this goes. We're gonna let it just, be in there for no good reason other than our bread's not ready yet. So I'm gonna show you the bread while it's rising, and we're gonna add olive oil to the dish. This is what is like kind of the key thing about focaccia. It's not dry because it's so oily. The bread has, I think that's the auto lease part. Sourdough people come at me, but the bread has salted and floured and startered and watered, and now we just have to lift up the dough, and we're gonna put olive oil in it, and then we're going to just cover it with saran wrap. If you have another like eco wrap, you can use that too. Use what you got. Just not a tea towel because it's gonna kind of dry out at the top. You really want to give it this like covered space so that it can yield a higher rise. Olive oil for this, it's cheaper and the flavor is great. But avocado in your mayo because it's not great to use olive oil in your mayo. So you just put some on the bottom, spread it around the bowl. We don't want it to stick to the bowl. And this is how I do it. If you have a way that you like better, you can do that too. It's really hard to mess up focaccia. In the end, you're gonna push your fingers into this like big, bubbly, delicious, greasy dough, and you're gonna love it. Okay, we're gonna cover this. Good to go. Let it rise, let it double, let it triple, whatever you wanna do.
One shift later.
It's been a long day of parenting. I feel like the higher my ponytail gets, the more raggedy it is. It just reflects the humidity in Texas and the level of feelings all of us have had, including myself. But I feel really good about this. So Bo is holding the camera because it's getting darker outside, and you're gonna see this better like this. So that sourdough really did its job, and it's doubled in size. We're gonna put it in this pan. You can do this. Most people do their focaccia on a baking sheet. I just really like that personal pan pizza texture. So I put it into a skillet. If I've left this overnight, I didn't tonight because I'm too hungry, but if I've left this overnight, then I put it on the stove to like relax while the heat is going. So when I preheat the oven, which I just did and forgot to tell you about, but the oven is preheating to 425, then the fun part of focaccia is you just start shoving your fingers into it. In the pan, it's gonna look a little different, like in a sheet pan, like a cookie sheet. It's gonna look a little different, but in here, you just keep pushing your fingers in. This is not a long ferment today, but you can ferment this for like 72 hours if you want to. We got a little bubble in here, a little bit more bubbles coming here. So this is just gonna be a really dense, I don't know if dense is even the right word. It has bubbles in it. It's just gonna become this really great, satisfying, like filling, satisfying bread. So I rest it until the oven is ready. Lots of times I'm cheating on preheat, but today I am not cheating on the preheat. I'm gonna wait till it's at 425, and then I'm gonna put this in the oven. 30 minutes is what the recipe says, and I recommend it. It's out of the oven. It's glorious. It's giving. Book it pizza. We love it. I'm gonna cut it in half, and then I'm gonna what do you call that? I'm sure someone who does this as a job, not just to feed small, hungry, very picky people. We're gonna cut it in half like this, but then we're gonna cut it thin here. You could just do it like this if you like that thickness. I just like a little more thin. And then we're gonna smear it with that everyday bread spread. Ugh, look at that. She's a pro. She's a pro, guys. Okay. Smear it down. Put it in the oven, broil it, and then it's gonna be bubbly, crispy, beautiful on top. Still smelling garlicky, still smelling amazing. Ugh, I wish I could make this for you. Like if you have a baby, I'm bringing everyday bread spread to you. In fact, be liberal with this. Do not shy away from the thick schmear. Just go to town. You will thank yourself later when it comes out. Do not do like Sunday school, everybody gets one cookie. Throw all of this in the oven on broil. Watch it. And I say watch it with a very truthful warning. My family is notorious, specifically my mother, and I know you're watching, for setting this bread on fire. And I don't mean charring the edges and making it burn. I mean, you need a fire extinguisher. So what you're gonna see is it's gonna start to brown and bubble. And then you're gonna think, oh, I've got about 3 more minutes. No, you don't. You have about 40 more seconds. So watch it. Don't panic in the first 2 or so minutes, but you're gonna put it on broil for probably about 5 minutes, and then you're just gonna keep watching it until it's done. And then you're gonna eat it, and you're gonna email me, and you're gonna be like, Kelly, you just changed my life. I will never go to a family function. I will never go a day in my life without thinking about this bread. I'm going to become famous in my circles for bringing this bread. And I'm going to say you're welcome. Dax, I do not have dinner for you. It is so humid. You can see it like a mist outside. It's repulsive. The heat index today is 99, and it's 90 degrees. And it's May. The first week of May. How is this okay? I feel like it's not. But then again, maybe every year I think that. Every year I might think oh, this is too soon. We need to be talking about the weather. So you can see my schmear has gone schlumpy. It is no longer that thick plop that we loved from earlier today. It has gone Texas on us, y'all. So we're gonna finish this last one up. Into the oven they go. A little movie magic in between. If you want, you can toss it in the oven for me and put it on broil. Ah! How do they know where we are?
No.
They're so loud. We gotta go. Bo's been asking me to do cooking videos for years, and I've never felt confident enough to do them. And then I thought about sharing things with you that I'm making for my family all the time, things that we really enjoy, things that aren't ambitious in any kind of way, but they are delicious. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving us a like, and then check out these other cooking videos I think you're going to love.